Hello and welcome to this edition of FYI Law. I'm your host, Russ Thacker, and today with me is my friend and colleague, Bobby Guttridge, who's a criminal defense lawyer here in Vero Beach. What we'd like to do is talk to Bobby today about some interesting problems that typically occur around the holiday season, Bobby, and that's involving when people have maybe a little bit too much to drink. So first of all, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Russ.
And tell us a little bit about what are the rules of the road, or what are the requirements for DWI here in the state of Florida?
Okay, well, basically, the requirements are you can be found guilty of DUI two different ways. You can be impaired, meaning you just look drunk. You're so drunk that you can't really drive a car in a manner that is safe on the roads. And they have tests that they give you in order to determine that. Their favorite way of proving DUI, though, is making you blow into a breathalyzer and seeing if your breath alcohol level is over the legal limit, which in this state is 0.08.
Is there any requirements, or I should say, is there any kind of guideline that would help us indicate how much can you consume before you get to that 0.08? I mean,
well, unfortunately, everybody's different. One of the problems with having some real insight into what a person can consume is you have to understand that the breathalyzer doesn't really measure your blood alcohol level, which is what gets you drunk.
Right.
It measures how much alcohol is in your lungs, and that can vary greatly from person to person, not have any relationship at all to blood alcohol levels. Also, the machine is probably, in my opinion, not very accurate. So you almost have to blow into the machine. Every person would have to blow into the machine. You can blow harder into the machine, and it will change the readings. It depends sometimes when you drink, if you have alcohol in your mouth. So it's kind of hard to tell. It's a lot of variables. Yeah. But basically the rule is if you've had over 4, you probably shouldn't, depending on your body weight. But if you're a little girl, obviously you weigh 97 pounds, and a couple will probably get you over the limit. But if you've had over 4, that's probably not a good idea to get in your car and drink and drive, or at least not take the breathalyzer if you get stopped.
Okay, good advice. Now, what about this? I mean, I'm assuming alcohol is alcohol, Bobby. So if I have a couple of beers versus, say, some hard liquor, is there a difference as far as what that's going to show up to?
Well, as long as the alcohol content is basically the same, 1 ounce of alcohol in a beer is, I mean, of course, the alcohol content is lower, but 1 beer is approximately equal to 1 ounce of hard liquor, or 1 glass of wine. They're all pretty relatively equal.
All right. So let's assume, unfortunately, you're at a party and you maybe imbibe a little bit more than you should,
Sure.
And you're out on the road and you're pulled over. Take us from there. What's your best advice? How would you handle that situation?
Well, the first thing you should do if you don't want to get a DUI is don't drink and drive. Don't get in your car. Give the keys to somebody who hasn't been drinking. Just don't do it. But, of course, If you do, and of course, the chances of you getting in your car and drinking and driving are greater if you've been drinking, because your decision-making goes down a little bit. Make sure you have all of your documents, your driver's license, your registration, your proof of insurance, together in one safe, quick packet. So when the officer pulls you over, you can just reach over, here you go, officer, and you're not fumbling around for things, and you don't have to have a whole bunch of conversation.
All right, so the less you have to do, the better, obviously, advice.
Certainly, the less you have to do, and don't start arguing with the police officer, because he's looking for signs of impairment. Arguing is one of the big signs of impairment.
All right. So at that point, you've been pulled over. He's probably going to ask you to step out of the car and perform some field sobriety tests. Are you obligated to do those, Bobby?
Well, you're not obligated to do them. Of course, if you don't do them, you're almost assuredly going to get taken to jail. You really need to do as little as possible. If you think you're really drunk and you're not going to be able to do them at all, then don't do them. The chances are they're being videotaped, and you're just that's just going to incriminate you. And so you want to cooperate as little as possible if you think you're going to get arrested for something, especially if you don't have a lawyer available and you're not going to have one available at the roadside.
Right. Is it customary, though, almost as a given, if you don't agree to this field sobriety test, they're going to arrest you and take you down for further testing?
Usually that's what tends to happen. I mean, they give you a chance. If you start slurring your words and they think that you're intoxicated and you don't want to cooperate, they'll usually take you down there and try and get you to take a breathalyzer test and see if you are. Of course, if you don't cooperate at all, unfortunately, you're less likely to get convicted in the long run, although you're going to be on the ride, meaning you're going to be arrested and have to spend the night in jail.
Okay. Let's stop right there, Bobby, and come back and explore this in more detail. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to FYI Law, and with me is Bobby Guttridge, and before the break, Bobby, we were talking about your recommendations as far as what you should do if you were unfortunately stopped for a DWI. We were at the point where we were potentially at the police station. You've been arrested, and you're asked to take the breathalyzer. Run us through the ramification of the breathalyzer test.
Sure. Well, the first thing the officers are going to ask you to do is they're going to read you what's called implied consent, and it says that if you don't take the breathalyzer, you're going to lose your driver's license for a year if it's the first time that you haven't taken it, or 18 months if it's the second time. And here's the real nuts and bolts of how that works. If you refuse, and you've never refused before, your license will in fact be suspended for a year, just based on the refusal.
Just automatically.
Notwithstanding how you do in the DUI. You could win the DUI case, get completely acquitted, walk out the courtroom doors, free person, no conviction at all, and your license will still be suspended. Now, there is ways to challenge that. You're entitled to a formal review hearing where you can actually have sort of a mini trial in front of the Department of Motor Vehicles. At that time, the officer would have to show why he stopped you over, whether he read you the implied consent.
Right.
Although those things are very difficult to win, they can, on occasion, you can win them. If you lose that, your license will be suspended for a year, and you won't be eligible for a hardship for 90 days. So there's 90 days, what they call hard time, where you can't get any kind of driver's license.
I see.
So when you're making your decision whether to take it, you got to understand that the chances are you're going to have 90 days that you can't drive at all. Under any kind of a business license, no matter what your hardship is, you need to take your 100-year-old grandmother to the hospital and back. You still can't get one for 90 days.
Okay.
Now, if you do take it, and here's the trick that the officers really don't tell you, is if you take it and you blow over the limit, they're still going to suspend your driver's license for 6 months. The Department of Motor Vehicles. Win, lose, draw the trial, you're going to get your license taken for 6 months.
Interesting.
The difference in that, though, is you only have 30 days hard time.
Okay.
So there's 30 days that you can't drive without a driver's license, and obviously it's a lot easier to go 30 days without a driver's license than it is 90 days without any kind of driver's license.
I see. Now, how do you challenge? Do you challenge the breathalyzer in court, the accuracy of the breathalyzer? I know that used to be a common tactic with criminal defense attorneys.
Well, sure, you can still challenge the accuracy of the breathalyzers. You know, some people don't think it's very accurate. I particularly don't. You got to understand that this is an old computer. It's probably a 20-year-old computer at this point. And if you think back to what the computers were like in 20 years ago, I mean, what a laptop would be, it would take a whole room to have the same power.
I see.
And in fact, you know, you can go out into Sharper Image and you can get one of these little things. It's a handheld breathalyzer.
Okay.
All the modern technology that you can get, and you can keep this in your car, and it'll basically give you, in my opinion, just about the same accuracy level as the ones that they have in the station. And you can kind of gauge yourself. I would suggest everybody go out and get one of these. And if it...
Now, do you own stock in Sharper Image?
No stock. But if it's over a .04, don't get in your car.
Right. Now, so you feel this is fairly accurate as a self-monitoring device to kind of gauge yourself whether or not you can get in the car?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't rely on it to fight the case, but
Right.
certainly it'll give you some kind of a gauge which you can monitor yourself.
Now, how much would something like this cost?
$100.
$100.
Sharper Image. You get it through the catalog or any of the Sharper Image stores.
And you just, I'm assuming you just put the tube up to your
Yep.
mouth and blow in it.
It warms up, you put it in your mouth, and you blow for several seconds, and you'll hear a beep, and real easy to do. It comes with a bunch of these, so you can get all your friends to. It's a good party gimmick.
Fascinating. One more quick question. We've been talking about driving while intoxicated. What about just public intoxication? What are the elements of that, and what should you...
Well, basically, you've got to be harming other people. You have to be somewhat of a danger or a menace to the community. If you're just walking around and talking to yourself, that's not against the law. You have to be doing some kind of harm to the public.
All right. And another issue about vicarious liability, if you were at a party and, God forbid, you're serving alcohol and some minors drink it and go out and have an accident, are you aware of whether or not there's any culpability or liability there?
Well, there's, basically the dram shop laws, and You know, they're different in every state. They keep changing over and over again. Don't serve minors alcohol.
Exactly. And one last question, Bobby. Are you, as the consumer, entitled to have your Miranda rights read to you when you're stopped for potential DWI?
No, that's sort of a thing that's gone by the wayside. It's been watered down over the years. And in fact, most of the time they won't read your Miranda rights because that actually might invoke some rights, and they'll just let you talk. And that's one of the things you really need to watch out for. Most people in DUIs that don't take the breathalyzer get convicted because they talk too much.
All right, so just keep your mouth shut and do what the officer says.
Basically.
All right. All right, with that then, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. You're watching FYI Law with Russ Thacker.
Target, sales there probably down about 4%. Kmart, the second biggest U.S. discount retailer, it's already announced it had a drop in same-store sales for December. Now, several other names also